Sign this. Ethan Blake pressed a manila envelope into Naomi Carter's hand at her mother's graveside. The casket was still being lowered into the raw, open earth. The priest was still praying. Naomi was 7 months pregnant with his child. Sign it, now. His voice was cold, clipped, almost bored. No tremor, no sign of the man who had once knelt in her tiny apartment and asked her to marry him. Behind him, a slim brunette in a perfectly tailored black dress stood with a tissue pressed to her lashes. Sabrina Cole, his mistress. Her tears looked carefully measured, like part of an outfit. A few steps back, Ethan's parents watched everything unfold. Charles Blake, silver hair perfectly combed, jaw tight. Elaine, lips pressed, arms crossed. The corners of her mouth twitched in a way that, if you knew her, you would recognize as satisfaction. Naomi stared at the envelope. It felt heavier than wood, denser than grief. For a few seconds she couldn't move. Her brain refused to process that two things were happening at once: the lowering of her mother's body and the dismantling of her life. "What is this?" she whispered, though she already knew. "Divorce papers," Ethan said. "I've already signed them. I need your signature today." The air left her lungs. She swayed, one hand clutching the envelope, the other flying to her belly. The baby kicked, sharp and insistent, as if protesting. "At my mother's funeral?" Naomi's voice shook. "Ethan, are you out of your mind?" "This is the cleanest way," he replied, like they were discussing taxes. "No dragging things out, no false hope. We finish it today." "My mother is being buried," she said, each word scraping her throat. "I'm carrying your baby, and you think this is the moment to end our marriage?" He didn't flinch. "Sign it, Naomi." The priest's voice droned on about dust and eternity, but the words had turned into a meaningless hum. Naomi could feel eyes turning toward them, feel whispers rising around the grave like steam. People shifted in their seats. Someone coughed and then went very still. She looked past Ethan and saw them clearly now. Charles and Elaine, standing under a black umbrella even though the Houston sky only threatened rain. No tears, no grief for Miriam, just quiet, sharp-eyed watching. It hit her in one sickening wave. This wasn't impulsive. This was staged. Naomi's fingers shook as she opened the envelope. The first page was already flagged with a yellow tab where Ethan wanted her signature. Legal paragraphs swam before her eyes, but 3 words at the top came into sickening focus. Petition for dissolution. "Why?" Naomi's voice sounded flat to her own ears. "What are you doing?" Ethan straightened his tie. He looked almost relieved. "Because this is over," he said. "I'm with Sabrina now. She's pregnant. She needs me." The cemetery tilted. Naomi took a step back. "Sabrina is pregnant?" Sabrina lowered her eyes in a rehearsed gesture of fragile sadness, one manicured hand resting lightly on her perfectly flat abdomen. "You're leaving your pregnant wife," Naomi said slowly, "for another pregnant woman?" "It's complicated," Ethan replied. "Sabrina makes me feel alive." His gaze flicked over her body, pausing on her swollen stomach like it was a trap he'd narrowly escaped. "You make me feel trapped." The words sliced through her. Trapped. 2 years of marriage. Nights staying up talking about their dreams. Weekends cooking together in the cramped kitchen. The way he had told her, hand over hers on the positive pregnancy test, "This is our new beginning." All of that reduced to one word. Trapped. He held out a pen. "Sign the papers, Naomi. It's better for everyone if we don't drag this out." Around them, the atmosphere had changed. The funeral had turned into theater. Naomi could feel the guests watching, wondering what she'd done, what she'd failed to be, to deserve this public execution. She felt the old instinct rising, to apologize, to smooth things over, to fix whatever was broken. Then the baby kicked again, strong, angry. Naomi's spine straightened. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. Her voice surprised her. It no longer sounded fragile. It sounded cold. Ethan gave a small, pitying smile. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm choosing my happiness. You should try it sometime." He had no idea that in that moment he was making the most expensive choice of his life. Naomi looked at the open grave, at the brown rectangle of disrupted earth, at the polished wood now nearly out of sight, her mother, her only family. Gone. She looked back at the papers. Her hands shook so violently she could barely keep the pen steady, but she signed. Not because she agreed, and not because she surrendered, because she was seconds away from collapsing, and if she didn't end this scene now, her body was going to do it for her. She signed her name where he had flagged it. There, she said. Are you happy now? Ethan took the envelope from her like a courier closing a deal. You'll get your copy from my attorney, he said. We'll make sure you're taken care of, within reason. Within reason, Sabrina moved closer, looping her arm through Ethan's as if she'd earned the right. Charles and Elaine stepped forward to surround them, a small, satisfied little unit, like a family portrait Naomi had just been edited out of. Naomi watched them walk away from her, right there at the grave. Her husband, his mistress, his parents, all turning their backs in a single synchronized movement. The priest cleared his throat and tried to pick up the thread of his prayer, but the spell of reverence was broken. People were no longer thinking about death or heaven. They were thinking about Naomi, about gossip, about scandal. Naomi stood alone with the bitter taste of humiliation in her mouth and the weight of her child pressing against her ribs. Only when the last handful of soil thudded onto the casket did she finally move. She waited until everyone drifted away, until the folding chairs were being stacked, until the funeral director stopped glancing nervously at her like she might collapse and haunt the place. Then she sank to her knees in front of her mother's headstone. Her black dress soaked up damp earth. Her legs went numb. She didn't care. I don't know what to do, Mom, she whispered, pressing her palm flat against the cool marble. You're gone. He left. He left me here at your grave, with his child inside me. Her shoulders shook. For a while she cried like the girl she'd been when Miriam worked double shifts and tucked her in at 2 a.m. with cold hands and warm eyes. The girl who believed her mother could fix anything, but Miriam wasn't here to fix this. Miriam was 6 feet under, and the only thing between Naomi and complete ruin was Naomi. The wind picked up, stirring the oak branches above, sending a few leaves spiraling down. One of them brushed her cheek, feather-light. Her mother's voice rose in her memory, clear and stubborn. Never let them see you break. Naomi took a long, shuddering breath. The baby kicked again, reminding her that she wasn't entirely alone. She wiped her face with both hands. Her eyes were swollen, her nose red, her heart cracked open. But she was still breathing, still upright, still here. Okay, she murmured. You wanted me strong, Mom? Watch. She stood up, ankles protesting, back aching. She smoothed her dress, even though there was mud on the hem and dirt on her knees. She did not chase Ethan. She did not tear the papers. She did not beg anyone to stay. She picked up the pen he dropped, slipped it into her purse, tucked the divorce envelope under her arm, and walked toward her car. They thought they'd buried her along with her mother. They had no idea they'd just woken up the most dangerous version of her. The house she returned to felt like a museum of lies. The nursery down the hall with its half-assembled crib and yellow walls. The photo of her and Ethan at their wedding, still smiling from the mantel. The mug with "World's Best Dad-to-Be" in thick black letters on the kitchen counter, a cruel joke now. Naomi moved through the rooms like a ghost. Every object had a story, and every story hurt. The divorce envelope sat on the coffee table like a snake. She couldn't seem to throw it away, but she couldn't bring herself to open it again either. Her phone lit up on and off. Messages from Ethan's sister, from friends who sounded more curious than concerned, from distant relatives who wanted to check on her, but also couldn't believe what they'd heard. She let them pile up. By the third day, exhaustion was no longer just emotional. Her body was heavy in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Her mind felt like it was wading through concrete. On the 5th day after the funeral, when the mail had been brought in and dropped in a lazy pile on the entryway table, Naomi wandered into the little room at the back of the house, the one her mother had claimed whenever she stayed over, calling it "my office," even though it was just a converted storage room. The desk was an old wooden thing Miriam had bought at a thrift store and sanded herself. The surface was worn smooth by years of ledgers and invoices. The faint smell of her mother's perfume still clung to the curtains. For the first time in days, Naomi felt something other than despair. Here, her mother's presence was thick. This was where Miriam had spent long evenings, doing the books for small businesses that could barely afford her, but trusted her with everything. Naomi sat down in her mother's chair and let her fingers trace the grooves along the edge of the desk. A drawer stuck when she tried to open it. She tugged harder. Something dislodged from the underside and slid to the floor with a soft thump. An envelope, heavy, cream-colored, with her name written on it in Miriam's looping, familiar handwriting. Naomi froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she bent to pick it up. The paper felt old but solid, like it had been waiting. She broke the seal with shaking fingers. My dearest Naomi, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it probably means something has happened that I prayed wouldn't. Naomi's eyes blurred. She blinked hard, forcing herself to keep reading. You have a good heart. Too good sometimes. People see a soft face and an easy smile, and they think it means they can push. I've watched some of them, especially the people you married into. I don't trust them. So I did what I always do when I don't trust something. I prepared for the worst. There was a small brass key taped inside the letter. Naomi touched it with the pad of her finger, feeling its cool weight. Take this key and go to First Gulf Bank, downtown branch. Ask for safe deposit box 311. Inside, you'll find documents that will change everything. Investments, properties, accounts I've built quietly for 30 years, while everybody assumed I was just balancing other people's books and clipping coupons. Naomi's mouth fell open. I built it for you and for your child, for the day people show you who they really are. When that day comes, believe them. Then use what I've given you to make sure they never hold power over you again. Trust no one until they earn it. Be patient. Patience cuts deeper than anger ever will. I love you more than my own life. Show them what a Carter woman is made of. The room went silent. Even the hum of the old ceiling fan felt distant. Naomi stared at the key, at the words, at her mother's signature. First Gulf Bank, safe deposit box 311, investments, properties, accounts. Her mother, who had driven a 14-year-old Corolla and argued with the cashier over 30-cent coupons, was talking like a finance mogul. It didn't make sense. The baby kicked again. Naomi pressed her hand to her side and let out a shaky breath. Okay, she whispered. If this is one of your lessons, Mom, it's a dramatic one. She grabbed her bag, slipped the key and letter into an inner pocket, and drove downtown like a woman moving through a dream. She parked. She walked into the marble lobby of First Gulf Bank, feeling out of place in her wrinkled black dress and flats. She gave her name and the box number to the clerk. Something shifted behind the teller's polite smile when she typed it in. Right this way, Miss Carter, the woman said, suddenly more respectful, as if some invisible flag had appeared next to Naomi's file. The safe deposit room was quiet and cool. The clerk escorted her to the back, had her sign a form she barely read, then left her alone with a long wall of metal boxes. Box 311 was at eye level. Naomi slid the key into the lock, turned it. The mechanism released with a heavy click that echoed louder than it should have. She pulled the drawer out and set it on the small table inside the private booth. When she lifted the lid, she forgot how to breathe. Neatly organized folders, thick envelopes, tabs with typed labels. It looked like an accountant's dream. She picked up the first folder. On top was a statement from an investment account. Her eyes tracked the balance and stopped. 8 digits, then 9. She blinked, checked the name, checked the date, checked the currency. She pulled another statement, another account, another line of digits with more zeros than she'd ever seen tied to her family name. Real estate portfolios, commercial properties in Houston, Dallas, Atlanta. Equity stakes in companies she recognized from business news segments Ethan used to brag about understanding. Bonds, blue-chip stocks, private investments in startups that had apparently exploded. At the bottom of the drawer, a printed summary. Total net assets, $503,000. $500 million. Naomi's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the little metal stool, the baby rolling inside her at the sudden shift. $500 million. Her mother, Miriam, the simple bookkeeper in discount shoes, had built an empire in the shadows while raising her, while pretending they were barely scraping by. Tucked beneath the stack was a second letter. If you're looking at this summary, good. That means you opened the box and didn't faint. Every asset is in trust with you as the sole beneficiary. No husband, in-law, or opportunistic friend can touch it. The structures are airtight. I worked with the best lawyers I could find. Look for James Holloway, you'll like him. He doesn't flinch easily. Take your time, breathe, learn what you own. Then you decide what to do. And if someone has hurt you by the time you read this, if they've tried to break you while you were already grieving, don't scream, don't fight dirty, just be patient and let the truth do the work. Love, Mom Naomi sat in that chilled little booth, surrounded by proof that her entire understanding of her life had been wrong. Her husband had chosen this week to throw her away, believing she was a liability. Her in-laws had treated her like a burden, a charity case their son had inexplicably married. Her mother, they thought, was a tired woman with a good heart and no leverage. They had no idea they were standing next to a volcano. Naomi gathered the documents carefully and slipped them into her bag, her movements slow and deliberate. Her phone buzzed as she walked out of the bank into the Houston humidity. A new text from Ethan. Can you please just sign the papers so we can both move on? She stared at the screen for a long moment, the corner of her mouth turning up in a humorless, almost smile. She typed back 4 words. You have no idea. Then she slid the phone into her pocket, rested her palm on her belly, and whispered to her child, your grandmother just changed everything, and we're going to make sure the people who tried to bury us live long enough to regret it. Naomi opened the car door, sat down, and for the first time since the grave, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was loading a weapon. The next morning, Naomi woke with a start, unsure for a moment if the bank vault, the numbers, the letters had been some wild grief dream. Then she saw the folder. It lay on the nightstand where she'd dropped it the night before. Thick, heavy, impossible to ignore. The summary page stuck out slightly. The line of numbers at the bottom burned into her memory. $503,000. The baby shifted inside her as if sensing her racing thoughts. Naomi placed a hand over her belly and exhaled slowly. Okay, she murmured. If this is real, I need help. The right kind of help. Her mother's letter had been clear. Look for James Holloway. He doesn't flinch easily. Naomi made coffee with shaking hands, forced herself to eat half a piece of toast, then sat at the kitchen table with her phone and the letter. She typed his name into a browser search. His face came up in seconds. Mid-60s, dark skin, silver hair, eyes that looked like they'd seen more than anyone ever confessed. Managing partner at Holloway and Pierce, a boutique law firm specializing in high-net-worth estate planning and asset protection. Her mother hadn't hired some strip mall attorney. Naomi dialed the office number before she could lose her nerve. Holloway and Pierce, how may I direct your call? Yes, hi. My name is Naomi Carter. I believe I'm a client of Mr. Holloway's through my mother, Miriam Carter. She passed away last week. Her voice wobbled only slightly on the last part. There was a beat of silence. Then the receptionist's tone shifted, becoming more formal. One moment, Ms. Carter. Naomi listened to soft hold music and stared at the divorce envelope still sitting on the coffee table. It seemed smaller today, less threatening, like a piece of paper instead of a death sentence. Ms. Carter? A new voice, male, warm but precise. This is James Holloway. I knew Miriam very well. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you, Naomi managed. She left me a letter with your name and a key. I went to the bank yesterday. Ah, he said softly, and Naomi heard something like satisfaction under the sympathy. Then I think it's time we met in person. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I'll clear my schedule. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Yes, I can be there. Good. Bring whatever you removed from the box and, Ms. Carter. Yes? From this moment forward, assume you are no longer powerless. We'll discuss the specifics when you arrive. The line clicked off. For the first time since the funeral, Naomi felt like someone else was stepping into the frame with her. Not to rescue her, but to stand beside her in the war she hadn't known she was fighting. 3 hours later, she stepped out of the elevator onto the 40th floor of a glass tower downtown. The receptionist at Holloway and Pierce greeted her by name and escorted her into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Houston's skyline. James rose from behind his desk when she entered. He came around to shake her hand, his grip firm, eyes assessing. "You look like your mother," he said, especially around the eyes. Naomi swallowed hard. "I've been told that." "Sit," he said gently, gesturing to a leather chair. "You brought the documents?" She set the folders on the table between them. He rested his palms on them for a second, almost like a ritual, then opened the top one. "The summary page?" he prompted. She handed it to him. He skimmed it, though she suspected he knew the numbers by heart. "Good. This matches our records." He set it down and folded his hands. "What did you think when you saw it?" "I thought I'd misread it," Naomi said honestly. "Then I thought someone had made a mistake. Then I thought I was hallucinating." He smiled faintly. "Your reaction is more grounded than most. Some people faint." "I almost did," she admitted. "But then I thought, if my mother managed to build $500 million in secret while everyone underestimated her, I can at least stay conscious." His eyes warmed. "Miriam would have appreciated that." He pulled another file from his drawer. "Your mother was one of the smartest clients I've ever had, not just in terms of how she grew her assets, but in how she understood people. She knew you were kind. She also knew people would try to take advantage of that." Naomi's jaw tightened. She knew about Ethan. "She suspected something," James said carefully. "6 months ago, she hired a private investigator. She didn't tell you because she was dying and refused to spend what time she had watching you fall apart in real time. She wanted to give you tools, not trauma." "An investigator," Naomi repeated slowly. "She knew there was an affair?" "She knew there was a risk," he corrected, "and she knew his family. Your in-laws are not subtle." Naomi almost laughed. The sound stuck in her throat. He slid a labeled folder across the table. "This is the investigator's report. We'll get to it. First, you need to understand the fortress your mother built for you." He opened a binder and turned it toward her. "Charts, diagrams, trust documents. Every asset is held in layered trusts," James said. "Miriam is the settler. You are the beneficiary. There are spendthrift provisions that make it impossible for creditors or spouses to access the principal. Distributions flow through entities she controlled and that you now control as successor trustee." "In English," Naomi said weakly. "In English," he obliged. "There is no legal path for Ethan or his family to touch a cent of this. Not now, not in a divorce, not in the unlikely event they try something after your child is born. Your mother anticipated it. She closed every door they might try to pry open." He slid another document toward her. "Do you remember signing a prenup before your wedding?" Naomi frowned. "How could I forget?" Elaine insisted. "She said it was standard for their family. It was humiliating, honestly." "It is now your best friend," James said dryly. "They were so busy protecting Ethan's modest trust that they insisted on language separating marital assets from family inheritance. That language applies both ways. Their prenup, their terms now shield you." Naomi stared. All the resentment she'd carried over that document wavered. "So, I'm protected," she said slowly. "But what am I supposed to do? Just sit on this mountain of money while they rewrite the story of what happened? While they tell everyone I was the problem?" James's gaze sharpened. "Ah, now we get to the part I suspected you'd ask about." He tapped the folder labeled with her name. "Your mother called this her justice file. She left suggestions." "Suggestions?" "Scenarios," he clarified. "What to do if your spouse was unfaithful? What to do if his family attempted to control you? What to do if you were abandoned while pregnant?" She had a very specific mind. Naomi's stomach nodded. "She thought all of that was possible? She thought all of that was likely," James said, "and she trusted you to decide how far to take it." He opened the justice file. Inside were memos in Miriam's handwriting, lists of contacts, PR strategists, security firms, financial advisors, timelines, even notes on human psychology. One page was short and brutal. "If they hurt you publicly, do not rush. Let them believe they've won. Let them get comfortable in their story. Then show the world the version they didn't see." Below it, a name was circled 3 times: Lila Nguyen, Strategic Wealth and Reputation Management. "Ms. Nguyen is a financial advisor," James said. but she also understands optics better than most PR firms. Your mother insisted we bring her in if the worst-case scenario happened. This meets the criteria. Naomi laughed once, a quick exhale. Worst case, understatement of the year. James leaned back. So here are your options, Miss Carter. You can stay invisible. Live quietly off the income, raising your child, ignoring them as they slowly realize they miscalculated. Or, or, she prompted. Or we move, he said. Carefully, slowly. We build you into what your mother prepared you to be, a woman with undeniable financial power and a public narrative they cannot twist. We do not attack. We reveal. There is a difference. Naomi's mind flashed to Ethan's face at the grave, to Sabrina's faux sympathy, to Elaine's satisfied almost smile. I don't want some messy screaming match, she said quietly. I don't want to look bitter or crazy. I want the truth to stand on its own. I want them to feel what they made me feel. Only with receipts. James's lips curved. In that case, I think your mother chose the right daughter. He picked up his phone. Shall I call Miss Ningyan? Yes, Naomi said. Let's see what game we're actually playing. Lila arrived 20 minutes later. She was in her early 40s, sharply dressed in a charcoal suit with an emerald silk blouse that made her skin glow. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek knot. Her handshake was firm, her eyes curious and alert. So you're Miriam's girl, she said, taking a seat beside Naomi rather than across from her. I've been waiting to meet you for 5 years. 5 years? Naomi asked, startled. Your mother brought me in when this portfolio crossed the 9-figure mark, Lila said matter-of-factly. She told me 2 things. 1, I'm building this for my daughter. 2, she doesn't know yet, but she's going to need it. When I asked why, Miriam said, because she married into a family that sees her as a prop, not a partner. Naomi swallowed. Sounds like Mom. James slid the justice file toward Lila. We've reached Condition C. Lila scanned the top page, her expression darkening. Divorce at the funeral. She shook her head. I hate being right about people. She turned to Naomi. First, I'm sorry. Second, congratulations. You are one of the few people on earth whose mother left them not just money, but a battle plan. Naomi huffed out a disbelieving laugh. It doesn't feel like congratulations. It will, Lila said. Not today, but soon. She flipped to a blank page in her notebook. Let's outline what you actually want. I want my child safe, Naomi said immediately. I want stability. I want to never have to need Ethan for money. And I want the story of what he did to be known eventually, without me looking like I'm on a revenge rampage. Good, Lila said. Those are compatible goals. What does that look like? Naomi asked. Short term, Lila said, ticking off points. We secure your legal position. James will stretch the divorce timeline as much as the law allows. Every delay buys us leverage. We keep your inheritance legally and visibly separate from the marriage so they cannot claim ignorance later. What's medium term, she continued, we begin to introduce you to the world Miriam actually operated in. Philanthropy, business circles, not as the abandoned wife, but as the daughter handling her mother's legacy. And long-term, Naomi asked. Long-term, Lila said, her eyes glinting. We decide how, when, and where the full story is told. Not today, not tomorrow, but at a time and place that serves you, not them. We don't chase them down. We let your life speak so loudly that people come asking what really happened. And when they ask, we're ready. Naomi looked from Lila to James. You both talk like this is chess. It is, James said simply. They made the opening move at the grave. Your mother left you the board, the pieces, and 3 moves planned ahead. All you have to do is play. Naomi thought of the half-assembled crib in the spare room, the divorce envelope, Ethan's last text. You said my mother hired an investigator, she said. What did he find? James slid the folder toward her. When you're ready. Naomi hesitated, then opened it. Photos. Ethan and Sabrina at a hotel bar, in a parking garage, in his office, too close for colleagues. Time-stamped messages between Sabrina and a friend. He'll leave her. She's boring and broke and always tired. I told him I'm late. That got his attention. Another message a month later. Still not pregnant, but he's terrified of losing the baby. Easiest leverage I've ever had. Naomi's jaw locked, her vision sharpened. Ethan hadn't just made a mistake in grief. He'd walked into a con with his eyes shut and dragged her into the fallout. Does he know you have this? Lila asked. No, James answered. Miriam didn't confront him. She chose documentation over drama. Naomi closed the file carefully. Then we keep it that way. For now. Lila nodded, satisfied. Good. Let him stew. Let him project his own guilt for a while. Meanwhile, we build you. How? Naomi asked. Step 1, Lila said. You move out of the house with his memories and into something that actually belongs to you. Naomi blinked. Move where? James flipped to another section of the binder. Your mother's real home, he said. The one she kept in a trust so the Blakes would never sniff it. I'll have the keys delivered by tomorrow. Naomi stared. Her mother had lived 2 lives. The modest apartment Naomi knew, and a hidden estate funded by the empire she'd built alone. Step 2, Lila went on gently. You rest. You're in your 3rd trimester. You just buried your mother. You've been publicly humiliated. You're allowed to heal before we start placing you in rooms where the Blakes will hear your name whispered in ways they can't control. Naomi's throat closed. And step 3? Lila smiled, and it was not a soft smile. Step 3 is when they realize the woman they left at a graveside is the woman everyone in this city now wants to meet. Naomi sat back, the weight of it all pressing down. Fear, grief, rage, power. Her mother had given her enough money to walk away quietly and never look back. She'd also given her the tools to do something else. Fine, Naomi said, her voice low but steady. Let's play. Sabrina Cole had never liked hospitals. They smelled like antiseptic and fear. Even the glossy brochures about maternity suites couldn't cover the undercurrent of panic that seemed baked into the walls. She scrolled through photos on her phone instead. Pictures of her and Ethan at rooftop bars in his car, her head on his shoulder. Carefully chosen angles where her hand rested on her stomach like a promise. 4 months pregnant, the caption on one of them read, His miracle, my new beginning. The comments were a mix of congratulations and thinly veiled judgment about homewreckers that she pretended not to see. She kept scrolling, ignoring the whisper in the back of her mind that said, You're running out of time. Babe? Ethan called from the tiny kitchen in their apartment. You okay? I'm fine, she lied, pressing a hand to her still flat abdomen. Just tired. He appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame, studying her. He looked older these days, dark circles, tension in his jaw. The swagger he'd had when he strutted away from the funeral was fading. I was thinking, he said slowly, maybe I should come to your next appointment. Her stomach dropped. She kept her face neutral. You know my doctor's policy, she said, rolling her eyes lightly. She doesn't like partners there for 1st trimester appointments. Too much stress. You said that 2 months ago, Ethan replied. You're almost out of the 1st trimester now, right? Almost, she said quickly. And you will come. Just after the next one, okay? It's just measurements and blood work. Boring stuff. He didn't look convinced. Sabrina hated that. She preferred Ethan when he was easy to steer. She slid off the couch and walked toward him, letting her fingers trace the inside of his wrist. You don't trust me? It's not that, he said. It's just, I've never even heard the heartbeat. I haven't seen an ultrasound with your name on it. It feels like I'm missing everything. Guilt flickered and died. Guilt was a liability. Besides, she told herself, this was temporary. Long enough to get a ring, a joint account, something binding. Then she could quietly announce a loss and pivot to IVF talk if needed. Next time, she promised, voice syrup smooth. I'll schedule a visit just for us. He nodded, but the crease between his brows stayed. Later that night, when Ethan went to shower, Sabrina opened her messages. Her friend Tessa had sent a flood of texts. You're going to get caught if you don't show a bump soon. Have you thought about just getting pregnant for real? This is messy, Bree, she typed back. Relax. Men like Ethan see what they want to see. By the time he asks real questions, his divorce will be final, and I'll be Mrs. Blake. Do you know how much money his family has? Her fingers hovered over the keys for a second. She added one more line, half joking, half true. If his wife had any money, they wouldn't have pushed this hard. She's broken dull. I'm an upgrade. She hit send. In another part of the city, Naomi sat in an office that smelled faintly of leather and old paper, a folder open on her lap. Her eyes flashed over screenshots of the exact messages Sabrina was sending. She'd read them 3 times, each pass burning away another layer of the girl she'd been before the funeral. She really thinks she's clever, Naomi said quietly. James nodded. Most con artists do, until documentation catches up. Naomi closed the folder. Let her keep talking. She moved into her mother's hidden estate on a Tuesday. It was 20 minutes outside Houston, behind tall iron gates in a long drive lined with live oaks. The house rose at the end of it, all white stone and tall windows, the opposite of the cramped apartment she'd grown up in. This is where she really lived? Naomi asked, stepping onto cool marble floors. On weekends, James said. She maintained the apartment so nobody asked questions. This place is held in a trust under a name no one would connect to her. Naomi ran her hand along the banister of a sweeping staircase. Everywhere she looked, there were reminders of a life she'd never known her mother had. Art on the walls, shelves of books, a sunlit kitchen with professional-grade appliances. For a moment, she felt angry. Why didn't she show me this? Naomi demanded, turning on James. Why did she let me think we were always one broken-down car away from disaster? James didn't flinch. Because you were married to a man whose mother checked price tags when she came to visit. Miriam told me once, if they knew what we had, they'd try to chain my daughter to them forever. She wanted you to be loved or not, without this factoring in. Naomi exhaled slowly. Her anger dulled, replaced by reluctant respect. You're safe here, James said. The Blakes don't know this property exists. It's time they lost the ability to drop by and check on you. Naomi looked out at the sprawling backyard, the pool, the distant glint of a small guest house. Safe. The word hit her harder than she expected. For months she'd been bracing for impact. Now for the first time, she felt something else. Space. Lila will come by tomorrow, James added. We'll set up your home office. You have a foundation to run. A foundation, Naomi repeated. The Miriam Carter Trust for Opportunity, James said. Your mother filed the paperwork years ago. It's been dormant, funded but inactive. She wanted you to decide how it would move. Naomi pictured Miriam hunched over ledgers, clipping coupons, then pivoted to the cold vault with $500 million under her name. That's so like her, she murmured. No big speeches, just structures. That night she lay in a king-size bed that didn't squeak when she rolled over. The baby kicked as if testing new territory. We're not where they left us, she whispered into the dark. We're somewhere they can't touch. 3 weeks later, Naomi walked into her first charity luncheon as more than a donor in name only. The event raised money for a children's hospital renovation. Lila had handled the logistics, coordinating with James to arrange a 7-figure pledge that would quietly but unmistakably put Naomi on the radar of everyone in the room. The ballroom hummed with conversation, clinking glasses, polite laughter. The women at the registration table did a double take when Naomi gave her name. Miss Carter, of course, one of them said quickly, smoothing her hair. You're at the front table. The front table. Naomi's cheeks heated, but she lifted her chin and followed the attendant. If she was going to do this, she would do it fully. Remember, Lila had said in the car, you're not here to show off. You're here to exist where you actually belong. They will do the rest. Belong. The word sat strangely in Naomi's chest. She reached her table and found herself seated between the hospital's chief of surgery and the CEO of a logistics company whose billboards she'd driven past 100 times. Across from her sat a city councilwoman and a tech entrepreneur whose face she recognized from magazine covers. The conversations came quickly. We're so sorry about your mother, the surgeon said. Miriam was a quiet genius. Our accounting department adored her. She never mentioned her investments, the CEO added cautiously. Remarkable discipline. Naomi smiled slightly. She believed people only need to know what affects them. Wise woman, the councilwoman said. And now you're picking up where she left off. If I can do half as well, I'll consider it a success, Naomi replied. Her heart was thudding, but her voice stayed steady. She talked about Miriam's passion for education, her belief that medical care shouldn't bankrupt families. Her quiet habit of paying overdue bills at the clinic when nobody was looking. She didn't mention Ethan. She didn't need to. Rumors had already done that for her. Across town, at an ordinary corporate cafeteria in an ordinary office tower, Ethan stared at his phone. Rachel had just sent him a photo from the luncheon. It showed Naomi, very visibly pregnant, laughing with the hospital's CEO, her hand resting lightly on her belly. The caption on the hospital's official page read, "We're honored to receive a transformative gift today from the Carter family in memory of the extraordinary Miriam Carter." A transformative gift. Ethan's first thought was that there must be another Carter family, some oil money clan, some rich old Southern dynasty. Then he zoomed in. Naomi's face filled his screen. Her dress looked like it cost more than his last bonus. The table she sat at was the kind reserved for people who were thanked by name from the stage. "You knew her mom was loaded?" Rachel's next text came in hot. "Or did you divorce an heiress at a grave?" His stomach dropped. His fingers went cold. "No. She wasn't." "She grew up in an apartment," he typed clumsily. "Miriam did bookkeeping for strip malls." Rachel's reply was immediate. "Well, apparently she did bookkeeping for half the city and bought it while you weren't paying attention." At the end of the luncheon, Naomi gave a brief speech. Simple, no theatrics. She talked about her mother's belief that quiet money could still make loud change. The local business journal snapped photos. The society blogger in the back took notes. Naomi's name began moving through circles that had never once discussed Ethan Blake except as an employee. When Naomi got back to the estate, drained but standing, Lila was waiting in the foyer. "You did well," Lila said. "You didn't overshare. You didn't undersell. You were exactly what you are, a woman stepping into responsibility." Naomi kicked off her heels and groaned. "My feet disagree." "The coverage will be online before dinner," Lila added, checking her phone. "And before you ask, yes, we made sure the Blakes would see it. Your mother believed in efficient communication." Naomi leaned against the cool wall for a second. "Do you think they understand yet?" "Not fully," Lila said. "Right now they're in the confusion stage. Next comes denial, then panic, then bargaining. Then, if we let them, public redemption. But that last part is optional." Naomi thought of Ethan handing her the pen at the grave. "Redemption is not on tonight's agenda," she said. That evening, Ethan's mother paced her spotless kitchen, clutching her phone so hard her knuckles went white. "Don't you dare ignore me," Elaine said when Ethan finally picked up. "Have you seen the news?" "Hi, Mom," he said wearily. "What news?" "Elena just sent me a link. Naomi just gave a donation that put her on stage with the hospital board." Her voice trembled. "Where did she get that kind of money, Ethan? Did she steal something? Did she—" "She wouldn't steal," Ethan snapped more sharply than he intended. "You know that." "Then why is she suddenly on the front page of the Chronicle business section?" Elaine hissed. "Why is everyone asking me why my son divorced a woman whose mother apparently built a fortune?" Ethan sank into a chair. "I don't know." "You need to find out," Elaine said. "People at the club are looking at me like I've been lying. Charles is furious. Fix it." He hung up and stared at the wall. He had chosen Sabrina because she represented escape from everything he resented. Responsibility, routine, the slow grind of building a life. Naomi had been steady, solid, predictable. Now the predictable one was at the top tables, and he was the one everyone avoided in hallways. Ethan glanced at Sabrina's closed door. She claimed she didn't feel well. Again, no doctor's proof, no visible changes, no nursery. For the first time, the thought formed fully. What if I blew up my life for nothing? He didn't know that in Naomi's study, under the watchful eyes of Miriam's framed photo, an entire folder of evidence sat organized, highlighted, and ready. Not to be flung in rage, to be deployed later, like a precision strike, when the whole city was watching. Naomi went into labor on a gray Thursday morning, 3 weeks after her last public appearance. She woke before dawn with a pressure low in her back and a strange, rolling tightening across her abdomen. At first, she thought it was just another late pregnancy discomfort. Then the tightening came again, stronger, and did not fully recede. By the time the sun crept over the horizon, the contractions had a rhythm, 10 minutes apart, then 8. Her night nurse, Lena, A calm woman with quick hands and a softer voice than any lullaby, pressed a hand to Naomi's belly and nodded. "It's time," Lena said. "Let's go meet your daughter." At the private wing of Memorial General, where James and Lila had insisted she register, the nurses greeted her by name. The room looked more like a boutique hotel suite than a delivery room. Muted tones, a couch, warm lighting. But the equipment was state-of-the-art. Naomi labored for 7 hours. In the breaks between contractions, she thought of her mother, of Miriam standing in food stamp lines when Naomi was a baby, keeping her head high, of Miriam rebuilding after her own heartbreaks, of Miriam sitting across from James years ago saying, "I will not be the last line of defense. I want my daughter to have a fortress, not a trench." In the worst of the pain, when the world narrowed to white and it felt like she was being split in two, Naomi repeated a sentence in her head. "You survived the grave. You will survive this." When they finally placed the baby on her chest, small, outraged, perfect, Naomi forgot everything else. The room, the story, the betrayal, it all faded to a hum under the sound of her daughter's first cries. "Hi," Naomi whispered, tears sliding freely now. "Hi, my girl." The baby's fist curled around her finger with surprising strength. "What's her name?" the nurse asked, pen ready above the birth certificate form. "Margaret," Naomi said instantly. Her voice shook but didn't break. "Margaret Elise Carter." No Blake. She'd filed to restore her maiden name 2 weeks earlier, a quiet administrative battle James had won easily, backed by the prenup and the looming evidence file. Naomi dozed on and off for the next few hours, floating between exhaustion and an odd lightness. Every time she woke, baby Margaret was there, a weight on her chest, a promise in human form. Flowers began arriving before Naomi had even fully processed the birth. Arrangements from the hospital board, from the councilwoman she'd met, from business leaders, from charities she'd quietly supported in her mother's name. "Congratulations on your beautiful daughter." Miriam would be so proud. "Welcome to the world, little Margaret. The city is already better for having you in it." A bouquet of white roses arrived with a card signed only. L. The note read, "The strongest structures are built during storms. Rest. We've laid the foundation. The house goes up next." Naomi smiled, even as tears stung her eyes again. 2 days later, she went home. Home now meant the estate, the house with ceilings high enough that her grief didn't bounce back off them. The nursery, which had been a bare room with a crib and boxes 2 weeks ago, was now fully formed. Soft curtains let in the right amount of light. A mural of abstract clouds wound around the walls. There was a rocking chair that fit Naomi's body like it had been made to catch her in her weakest moments. Lila had supervised the entire transformation herself. "You didn't have to go this far," Naomi murmured, running her fingers along the crib rail. "I did," Lila said simply. "Your mother would have." They put baby Margaret down in the crib for the first time. She squirmed, then sighed, tiny chest rising and falling. Lila checked her phone. "The invitations went out while you were in labor, by the way." Naomi blinked. "Invitations?" "The launch gala for the foundation," Lila reminded her. 6 weeks from Saturday, formal, 4 seasons. Name already on every calendar that matters. A ripple of nerves went through Naomi's abdomen, unrelated to any physical recovery. "I just had a baby," she said, half protesting. "You also just became the sole steward of $500 million, Lila replied. "We chose the date carefully. Enough time for you to regain your strength. Not enough time for the Blakes to restructure their story." Naomi looked down at Margaret. Tiny fingers flexed in sleep. "Will they be invited?" she asked. "Yes," Lila said. "We debated it, but your mother's notes were clear. Make sure the ones who tried to destroy her stand in the room when the truth speaks." Her exact words. Naomi ran her tongue over her teeth, thinking. "They'll come." Lila's mouth curved. "Of course they will. Pride is one asset they still have in abundance." For the next weeks, Naomi's world contracted and expanded at once. Days were measured in feeding schedules, tiny diapers, and the indescribable joy of seeing her daughter's eyes open wider, focusing on lights and faces. Nights were a blur of interrupted sleep and whispered lullabies, Lena slipping in and out like a benevolent ghost. But between all of that, Naomi worked. In the quiet breaks, she reviewed foundation documents. She signed off on a mission statement that centered on women rebuilding after economic abuse, on grant programs for single mothers, on partnerships with legal aid clinics. She met, over video calls, with the board Lila and James helped assemble, a diverse group of women and men who cared about more than cocktail photos. "This is not a vanity project," Naomi said in one meeting, Margaret dozing against her chest. "This is not about my divorce or my mother's revenge. This is about making sure women who don't have a Miriam or a James or a Lila still have options. Surnom. And if it also serves as a cautionary tale to those who think they can use people without consequence," one board member asked, half joking. Naomi's gaze was steady. "Then that's just efficient design." Meanwhile, James coordinated quietly with investigators, accountants, and a small PR firm that specialized in narrative control. "We're not leaking anything yet," he told Naomi. "We're just making sure that when the story breaks, it breaks on our terms." Ethan's terms were unraveling. The first tear in his perfect story came at the OB's office. He'd insisted on going a second time. Sabrina had delayed, deflected, cried, but eventually, backed into a corner by his growing anger and his sister's pointed questions, she'd given him an appointment date and time. He'd taken the afternoon off, driven her there, watched her sign in. Then the nurse called a different name. "Maybe she's running behind," Sabrina muttered, checking her phone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, the nurse came to the waiting room again. "Ms. Cole?" Sabrina's spine stiffened. Her hand tightened around her purse. "Yes," she said, voice strained. "I'm sorry," the nurse said. "Dr. Patel's office doesn't have you on the schedule today, or any day this month." The room tilted for Ethan. "There must be some mistake," he said. "We confirmed. We haven't seen Ms. Cole since her last checkup," the nurse said, frowning. "In June, for routine labs." "Not prenatal?" Ethan asked slowly. The nurse glanced at the chart in her hand. "No, sir. There's no pregnancy file here." The drive home was silent at first. Finally, Ethan pulled over on a side street, turned off the engine, and looked at Sabrina. "Are you pregnant?" he asked. She stared straight ahead. "How can you even—" "Don't," he said, and his voice was as cold as Naomi's had been at the grave. "Don't cry. Don't deflect. Just answer." Her facade cracked. "I was late," she said, her voice small. "I was sure. But then, I wasn't. And if I told you, you would have gone back to her." "So you lied," he said. "I gave us what we needed," she shot back, bitterness rising. "You were miserable. You told me every day how trapped you felt. I just gave you a push." Ethan dropped his head into his hands. "This," he said hoarsely, "is what I burned my life down for." She reached for his arm. "We can still—" He pulled away like her touch burned. Back at the estate, Naomi rocked Margaret to sleep while Lila scrolled through an incoming report from the investigator. "Parking lot confrontation," Lila murmured. "No prenatal record." Sabrina admitted the lie. Naomi kissed the top of her daughter's head. "He knows now?" "He knows he set himself on fire with no water in sight," Lila said. "Good. Let that sink in before tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Naomi echoed. Tomorrow was the gala. The invitations had been impossibly elegant. Heavy cream stock, gold foil, the name of the foundation emblazoned at the top. The Miriam Elise Carter Fund for Second Chances. 500 invitations had gone out. 2 were delivered by courier to an upscale condo downtown, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Charles Blake and to Mr. Ethan Blake plus guest. Another envelope, hand-delivered to Sabrina, had arrived with a simple card. Ms. Sabrina Cole, valued for her support of women's causes. "Why would she invite us?" Sabrina had demanded, waving the card in Ethan's face. "She hates us." "She's trying to look gracious," Elaine had said. "If we don't go, it makes us look guilty. If we go, we can show everyone we're not intimidated by her little show." Deeper than all their calculations, another current ran. Curiosity. How rich was she really? How much had Miriam left? Had they really thrown away a future tied to that? Naomi knew all of it. James's contacts had ears in the rooms where the Blakes panicked. "Are you nervous?" Lila asked that night, standing in Naomi's dressing room as the stylist adjusted the midnight blue gown over her postpartum hips. "Yes," Naomi said. And also, calm, which makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, Lila said. You've already lived the worst day. This is just the recap with better lighting. Naomi looked at herself in the mirror. 3 months ago, she'd stood at a grave in a black dress, eyes swollen, shoulders caved inward. Tonight, she stood tall in a gown that skimmed her curves, her hair swept up to show the line of her neck. Her body still carried the softness of recent birth, but her eyes were sharp. Margaret was with Lena in the nursery, fed and bathed, blissfully unaware that her mother was about to step onto a different kind of stage. Naomi pressed a kiss to her daughter's sleeping forehead before she left. "You will never wonder what your mother did," she whispered. "You'll know." Then she picked up the speech Miriam had helped her outline in that justice file, tucked it into her clutch, and walked downstairs. The Four Seasons ballroom glowed. Crystal chandeliers sent warm light spilling over white tablecloths and sprays of lilies. The band in the corner played something smooth enough to fade into the background, but strong enough to make silence impossible. Servers floated, refilling glasses, directing guests to their tables. A huge banner hung behind the stage. The Miriam Elise Carter Foundation for Second Chances. Naomi arrived exactly on time. Not early, to seem overeager. Not late, to draw cheap attention. She stepped out of the car, the flash of cameras from local press reflecting off her dress like constellations. For a heartbeat, her breath hitched. Then she spotted James and Lila waiting near the entrance, flanked by two members of a discreet security team. "You look terrifying," Lila said approvingly. "In the best way." "Terrifying is not the adjective I was aiming for," Naomi murmured. "You wanted inevitable," James corrected. "You nailed it." They moved through the receiving line. Guests approached with outstretched hands, condolences, congratulations, and calculations in their eyes. Naomi greeted each one with the composure she'd practiced. Warm, grateful, but never ingratiating. She was host, not supplicant. Half an hour in, she felt them before she saw them. The atmosphere shifted, just slightly. Conversations dipped. A couple of heads turned toward the entrance. The Blakes had arrived, Charles in a tux that fit like it had been made last decade and carefully maintained. Elaine in a navy gown with more beadwork than taste. Ethan in a black suit that suddenly looked ordinary in this room. Sabrina on his arm in a dress that tried too hard. Naomi did not go to them. She let an usher guide them to their assigned table near the middle of the room, not in the nosebleeds, but not at the front either. Close enough to see everything, far enough that they were not the story. "Absolutely devious," Lila murmured when she saw their seating placement. "Well done, James." "They'd have refused an obvious punishment," James said. "Better to seat them where everyone can see their faces when the lights dim." Dinner passed in courses. Naomi picked at her food more than she ate it. Her stomach was too full of adrenaline and ghosts. From time to time, she could feel Ethan's gaze on her, hot and frantic. She did not indulge it. At 8:30, the band softened, the lights dimmed slightly, and the MC took the stage. He spoke about Miriam, her modest public life, her unexpected financial legacy, the mission of the foundation. He thanked major donors, gestured to the impact displays around the room. "And now," he said finally, "it is my honor to introduce Miriam's daughter, the woman who has chosen to turn grief into something that will outlast all of us. Please welcome Ms. Naomi Carter." Applause swelled. Naomi rose, heart hammering but steps steady. Her heels clicked against the stage floor. The podium light warmed her face. Behind her, the giant screen flickered to life with a sleeping photo of baby Margaret, then shifted to a slideshow of Miriam, young, older, always with that quiet watchfulness in her eyes. "Thank you for being here," Naomi began. The microphone carried her voice to every corner of the room. "3 months ago, I buried my mother. It was the worst day of my life." A hush fell. "Partly because I lost the woman who carried me through every storm, and partly because, while her casket was being lowered, my husband handed me divorce papers at her grave." A collective inhale swept the room. Naomi's tone didn't waver. "I was 7 months pregnant with his child," she continued. "I signed those papers with dirt under my knees and tears on my hands while people watched and whispered. Some of those whispers made it into this room in the weeks that followed." Far back, Elaine went pale. Sabrina's mouth dropped open. Ethan stared at the tablecloth. I'm not telling you this for pity, Naomi said. I'm telling you because it's the context for the work we're doing tonight. My mother knew something about being underestimated. She was a bookkeeper, and everyone decided that meant she was small. She clicked the remote. The screen behind her shifted from Miriam's smiling face to a simple, shocking slide. A bar graph showing asset growth over 30 years. Then another, a net worth summary, 500 million. Gasps, murmured curses. Someone dropped a fork. For 30 years, my mother quietly bought pieces of this city, Naomi said. Strip malls, warehouses, small apartment complexes, then tech stocks, then commercial properties. She diversified. She compounded. She studied. While people assumed she was counting their money, she was building her own. The slides cycled, annotated deeds, blurred account statements, the names of companies she held sizable chunks of. She left all of it to me, Naomi said. Not in a way anyone could grab. Not in a way that could be negotiated in a divorce. Every structure you see here was designed to keep me safe from exactly the kind of betrayal that spun my world off its axis 3 months ago. She paused. Let the room absorb it. But money wasn't her only legacy, Naomi continued. She also left me instructions. Pages and pages of notes on what to do if the people who promised to love me turned out to be opportunists instead. She clicked again. The next slide held blurred screenshots, names redacted for the audience, but unredacted on the screens of the attorneys and journalists James had strategically invited. Some of you may know parts of the story, Naomi said. You may have heard that my marriage ended because we grew apart, that my husband followed his heart, that his new relationship was an inconvenient blessing. Her voice cooled. What you haven't heard is this. The slide sharpened on a text exchange. Sabrina bragging about giving him the push he needed by saying she was late, about how easy he was to manipulate, about how Naomi was boring and broke. Another showed a bank transfer, Elaine's name to Sabrina's, $10,000 3 weeks before the funeral. The room erupted into horrified whispers. At the Blake's table, Sabrina turned to stone. Elaine's hand shook around her wine glass. Naomi didn't look their way. I am not here to debate their motives, she said evenly. The screenshots, the investigators' timestamps, the bank records, they speak for themselves. I am here to show you something else. What happens when you try to bury someone at their lowest and find out too late that you dug your own grave? A few people laughed softly, the bitter kind of laugh that comes from recognition. Naomi held up the remote, and the final set of slides appeared. Not dirt, not scandal, impact, projected shelters, scholarship programs, legal aid clinics, all carrying the Carter name. This foundation, Naomi said, is built from 3 things. My mother's foresight, my daughter's future, and the shards of a life other people thought they had the right to smash. It will fund second chances for women and children who don't have a Miriam in their corner. It will finance exits from abusive marriages, career retraining, safe housing. It will also serve as a reminder. She leaned slightly into the microphone. Be careful who you write off. Be careful who you humiliate in public. Be careful who you call trapped. Sometimes the people you cast aside are the ones whose names end up on the banners, while you sit in the audience wishing you'd chosen differently. Everyone knew exactly who she was talking about without her ever saying their names. She closed with a photo of baby Margaret, fists raised like a tiny boxer. This is my mother's granddaughter, Naomi said softly. She'll grow up knowing that her grandmother didn't just leave her money. She left her a map. And she'll grow up knowing that her mother didn't crawl into a corner to die when people tried to break her. She built something instead. The applause started before she stepped away from the podium. It swelled, rose, tipped over into a standing ovation. Some people were clapping for the drama, some for the scandal, but a lot of them were clapping for something else. Recognition, vindication, the quiet thrill of seeing cruelty meet its equal in preparation. Naomi walked back to her table, knees slightly shaky, smile small but real. She sat down, took a sip of water, and finally let herself breathe. Beside her, James leaned in. It's done, he said. Not for them, she replied. Across the room, Ethan stood suddenly, his chair screeching. For a second, it looked like he might shout. The security team stepped a fraction closer, just in case. Then his shoulders sagged. He sank back down, covering his face with one hand. Later, when most of the donors had migrated to the bar and the band had returned to smooth jazz, Ethan approached. He stopped a few feet from Naomi's table, hands trembling. "Naomi," he said softly, "please." She looked up at him politely, like he was a stranger asking for directions. "There's nothing left to discuss, Ethan," she said. "I know I can't undo." "You can't," she agreed. I didn't know about." He gestured vaguely, helpless, at the room, the slides, the full weight of what he'd thrown away. "That's the point," Naomi said. "You didn't know, because you never asked. You never looked deeper than what made you feel superior." His eyes filled. "I'm so sorry." "I believe you," she said, "and I hope you carry that sorry for the rest of your life, not as punishment, as a reminder." "I want to see my daughter," he whispered. "Please, just once." "You'll see her," Naomi said, "in a supervised visit room on a schedule the court sets. You will not parade her around to repair your image. You will not use her as proof you've changed. You had the chance to show up for your family. You chose not to." That landed. He flinched. Naomi stood, her dress falling around her like armor. "My child will grow up knowing that men can make awful choices and still learn. If you keep showing up quietly without drama, without expectation, we'll see what kind of father you become. If you fall back into excuses and self-pity, she'll see that too. Either way, I won't lie to her about you." He nodded, tears slipping free now. "Good night, Ethan," she said. She turned away, already done with the conversation. Outside the ballroom, the night air was cool. Naomi stepped onto the terrace for a moment, needing space. Her phone buzzed. It was a tag notification. Someone had posted a clip of her speech. The caption already read, "She got divorced at her mother's grave." "Tonight," she answered. The comments were pouring in. "Every woman I know needed this. Never underestimate the quiet ones. This is how you do justice without becoming what hurt you." Naomi locked the screen and tilted her head back to look at the sky. It was the same sky that had hung over the cemetery, but it felt different now. She wasn't standing alone at a grave with a pen in her hand and dirt on her dress. She was standing under chandeliers and constellations, with half a city watching her use the tools her mother had left. Back at the estate later that night, the house was quiet. Lena had sent a photo of Margaret sleeping, cheek pressed to a stuffed rabbit, lips parted. Naomi slipped off her shoes and walked softly into the nursery. The moon cast a thin stripe of light across the crib. She watched her daughter for a long time. "Here's what you need to know," she whispered finally. "Your father made choices. They hurt us. Your grandmother made choices. They saved us. I made choices. They turned pain into power. One day you'll make your own." Margaret shifted, sighing in her sleep. Naomi smiled. "We're not angry anymore," she murmured. "We're busy. We have shelters to open and scholarships to fund and girls to remind that being underestimated is a compliment, not a curse." Months later, when the story had spun outward into podcasts and think pieces and panel discussions about financial literacy and emotional abuse, the foundation would have funded dozens of second chances. David would have settled into a life constrained by court orders and limited visitation. Sabrina would have quietly left the city, her name burned in Google's memory forever. The Blakes would have retreated from the social circles they once ruled by sheer arrogance. Naomi would stand in her office, formerly Miriam's library, signing off on a new program that provided pro bono legal help at family courts. A reporter would ask in a final interview, "If you could go back to that day at the grave and change anything, would you?" Naomi would pause, thinking of the girl she'd been then. "I'd bring flats instead of heels," she'd say, a hint of humor in her voice. "But the rest? No, I wouldn't change it. If they hadn't tried to bury me, I wouldn't have learned exactly how deep my roots go. Because in the end, that was what the whole story came down to. A man who chose comfort over character, a woman who chose patience over theatrics, and a mother who chose to build an empire in the shadows so her daughter could walk in the light." He divorced his pregnant wife at her mother's burial, certain he was walking into a brighter future. He had no idea he was walking out of $500 million, out of her life, and into a world where his name would forever be a footnote in the story of how a Carter woman rose.